Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. A while ago I promised I would make a video on mental health during the querying process, and the reason I have yet to do that video is because I was thinking about the kind of advice I could offer, and I realised I really wasn't the person to be giving advice. If you don't know my story about my querying experience, I will link it down below, you can go and watch that, but I did not look after my mental health while I was querying. So I don't feel like I'm the person to give advice because it's something that I still need to work on. It's something I still need to improve. Obviously I'm not querying anymore, I have my lovely agent, but I still have to go through the same sort of emotions when it comes to submitting books to editors and things like that. So yeah, it's the whole sort of looking after your mental health as an author I still massively need to work on. So I just didn't feel like I was the person to give that advice. But luckily, I asked my friend Philippa East, who is a fellow author, but she is also a clinical psychologist, if she would come onto the channel and offer a little bit of advice. And she actually knows what she's talking about. So she was very kind and she came and joined me. So I really hope that this is helpful for you. Before we jump in, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you have any advice of your own. It would really help other aspiring authors and other authors who are just dealing with mental health in general, because being an author is hard, guys. And please don't forget to order my book if you haven't already. The Girl Beyond the Gate is available in ebook, audiobook and paperback, and I will leave those links down below. And my second book is coming very, very soon, so keep an eye out for details about that. Really quick thank you to everyone who has left a review or tagged me on social media. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, so if you would like a shout out in the next video, please go ahead and tag me and I will pop your name up on the screen. Okay, so we are talking today about mental health during querying, and I am joined by fellow author Philippa East. Hi Philippa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too. So I've spoken a lot about mental health during querying. I've had a lot of people message in about mental health during querying saying, you know, I'm going through this right now and I really want some tips and advice. I have not done this video yet because I didn't feel like I was the person to give those tips and advice, because I'm not a professional and, you know, the only experience I have is my own. So I thought I would hold off until I had someone with me who actually is a professional, and that is Philippa, because not only is she an author, she's also a clinical psychologist. So if anyone is going to give you good advice, it's going to be her. So I'm gonna quickly read out your bio so that if people don't know who you are, they can get to know you, and then we will jump into the tips and advice. So Philippa East grew up in Scotland and originally studied psychology and philosophy at the University of Oxford. After graduating, she moved to London to train as a clinical psychologist and worked in the NHS mental health services for over 10 years. Philippa now lives in the Lincolnshire countryside with her spouse and cat. Her first novel, Little White Lies, was published in 2020 and was shortlisted for the CWA, there it is, John Creasy New Blood Dagger. Safe and Sound is her second novel. There it is. And her newest novel, I'll Never Tell, is being released in 2023, and it's available to pre-order now. And I will pop the links to the pre-order down in the description bar, so definitely go and pre-order that. I'm so excited for it. Little White Lies was still is one of my absolute favourite books, so I'm very, very excited for your new one.
Oh, thank you.
So we're talking about mental health during querying, and like I say, so many people have messaged in and said that this is something that they've been dealing with and struggling with, and obviously I know my mental health took a huge nosedive during the querying process. Why do you think that it takes such a toll on our mental health when we're querying?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think you're absolutely right, Becca. I think that it's a really difficult part of the process, and I think it's difficult not to be affected by it, and it's difficult to keep your head about you in the querying trenches. So I think you know, just to say to everyone out there, like, you're not alone. Everybody experiences this. And it can happen at all kind of stages of being a writer. Obviously, when you're first querying to agents, it can happen when you're on submission. It can happen when you're trying to get a new contract. It's also worth remembering that agents experience it as well, because agents have to submit to editors. Editors also have to submit to their colleagues. So I think in the industry as a whole, we all understand that it's something which is quite a difficult part of the process, and we can all kind of relate. From a psychology point of view, I think there's a few things which make it particularly challenging. One is, as human beings, we're really not very good with uncertainty. And this goes back to the fact that in terms of our evolution and our basic survival, if we didn't know whether there was a saber-toothed tiger outside the cave or not, and we didn't know if we were in danger or not, or we didn't know where the danger was coming from, and we couldn't see it properly, but we thought it was there, that's very, very stressful. So as human beings, we don't do very well with uncertainty. And one of the things about querying is it's really, really uncertain. You don't know when you're going to get responses. You don't know what responses you're going to get. You don't know what the agent is thinking. So there's a huge amount of unknown and uncertainty. And that is fundamentally very anxiety provoking for us as human beings. The second thing, which is kind of related to that, is as human beings, we tend to not generally like not having control over our environment or our situations. And again, this would go back to evolutionary psychology. Like, if I know there's a saber-toothed tiger out there, or maybe I'm not even sure, which is worse, but I also know that I have no control over dealing with it, that leaves us feeling very helpless and very vulnerable. And that is also triggers off our sense of life or death, terror, threat, anxiety. So and again, querying, we have so little control over. Obviously, we can do our very best to put a good submission package together, but we can't force an agent to respond. We can't force an agent to like our books. We can't force them to respond in a particular timescale. And once we've sent the query out, there isn't a huge amount that we can do to influence the outcome. So not only are we in a position of uncertainty, but we also feel quite a big sense of lack of control or agency in the situation. Excuse the pun, agency. Didn't think of that. And then I think the last thing that I would highlight, which I'm sure we can all relate to, is that we've generally put a lot of ourselves, and at the very least, a lot of our time and resources into the particular book or piece of work that we're submitting. So there's usually a lot at stake, and that can be a natural part of the creative process. I think we generally, we kind of write from ourselves a lot of the time, and we're putting a lot of our own kind of thoughts and feelings and experiences sometimes into our work. Or going a step beyond that, sometimes we can pin a lot of our self-worth and self-esteem on success or failure with our writing. And obviously that can be very difficult if you're in a situation where you're not certain whether you're going to succeed or fail with your submission. You also don't feel that you've got a lot of control over whether you succeed or fail with your submission. And if a lot of your sense of yourself is riding on it, the stakes can feel really high. So uncertainty, lack of control, and really high stakes, put all that together, and that's why we have a nervous breakdown, basically, yeah. I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what you say about the high stakes, I feel like that was very much for me, because it's unlike any other industry. If you're going for a job interview, you put a certain amount of prep into preparing for the job interview, but you're not like, this is you have to write an entire book. You have to write 90,000 words, and then you have to edit it and edit it and edit it, and so much time and effort goes into it, and it might not get picked up. And I think for me, like, there's no other industry like that, even other creative industries. If you're an actor and you're going for an audition, you don't put in that amount of work until you've already got the job.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. really tough business. But yeah, no, it's so hard, and I completely empathise with anyone who's messaging in or anyone who's watching this video and sitting there thinking, you know, this is so tough and I'm really struggling mentally. Like it is just the most awful time. So when I was in that situation, I kind of felt like it was just part of the process, and I just kind of had to deal with it, and it was, you know, you have to expect it and you just kind of have to get on with it. Is there anything we can do if we're sort of querying and our mental health is struggling a little bit? Is there anything we can do to kind of help ourselves?
Well, I'll put a general statement in that if you are really struggling with your mental health, seek help for your mental health. Like, definitely, you know, never mind just in the terms of writing, you know, we should not be shy about going to the doctors or a friend or a counselor or whatever and just being like, I need some help. You know, we all need it. We all should use it. So yeah, that just as a general statement, don't struggle with your mental health and feel that you can't get some help with it. But sort of in terms of things that we can do for ourselves with the process of querying. And again, I do just say that it sucks, like querying just sucks. And it's, I think a bit like you say, Becca, kind of understanding that it's part of the process, and not to feel like if you're getting rejections, you're doing something wrong, because rejections are, you know, they are par for the course. And it's very unusual that people just, you know, flop out a book and bang, they get an agent. And often, of course, you're always going to be hearing the kind of positive stories. You're going to hear the stories that make it seem like it's just happened overnight and blah, 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 blah. And of course, it's generally not like that. But I think a couple of things, going back to what I was saying about uncertainty and lack of control. So I think trying to get some sort of order in the chaos can be helpful. And what I mean by that is, you know, having the next step that you're going to take. So if, you know, this round of submissions doesn't get you any full requests or acceptances, you know, having a good plan of what you're going to do next. So you've always got what I'm doing right now, but my next step as well. So you don't feel that you're just kind of in this vacuum with everything dependent on the response or lack of response from an agent. But again, feeling that you've got some sort of agency in the situation, that you're like, okay, well, what I'm going to do next is this. And that could be, you know, I'm going to get more feedback on my work. It could be that I'm going to do another round of edits. It could be that I'm going to research more agents, or whatever it is. But like, feel like you've got a plan of the next step. It might be that you're going to start working on the next project. And I often think of it as, you know, there's so many different roads that can lead to ultimately getting a book published. And when you're at any time point when you're submitting, that's just one road that you're trying, one path. It's that particular book, it's that particular time, it's those particular agents that you've submitted to. But I mean, there's infinite numbers of other paths that you may end up taking into publication. So always having a sense that this is the path I'm trying right now, but I'm going to continue to try all these other paths. And that means that you feel less, again, it's less kind of tunnel visioned into, this is my one shot. You know, if I don't get picked up now, it's, you know, that's it. And there's nothing else I can do. It's all out of my hands. I think I would say something as well about email checking, because I think, you know, a lot of people talk about, you know, they're just kind of doing refresh. And actually that can really keep you stuck in that real preoccupation and anxiety and emotional roller coaster about it. So, I mean, obviously we do need to tend to check messages and things, because there might be other things going on in our lives that we need to keep on top of. But sometimes I might suggest that, you know, you try and say, I'm just going to check my email, you know, maybe at the beginning of the day, middle of the day, and the end of the day. And outside of those times, I'm not looking. So it's, you know, it's kind of, you've got an on switch and an off switch from it. And it, you know, if an agent emails you at 9 a.m. in the morning and you reply at 12, it's not like you've kept them waiting. Do you know what I mean? It's not, you're not going to be missing anything but it's different to, you know, you constantly checking, because that's just creating a massive sort of chemical roller coaster in your brain, which isn't particularly good for you. So yeah, I suppose those would be. Oh, and the other thing would be, most agents or agencies say on their websites, how long a timescale you can expect to hear in. And I would just be very businesslike about it. If you haven't heard in that timescale, send a prompt. So again, sort of feeling that you can take charge a little bit. That's obviously not the same as hassling an agent, but keep track of what you've sent and when you can prompt. And that might mean that you can at least get a response, even if it's, it might be a no, it might be a yes. But again, you're not just in limbo with uncertainty. So be proactive where it's appropriate to be proactive, and don't be feeling that you're just kind of helpless and dependent on some magical agent out there to make all your dreams come true.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about the email checking, because I think that was my biggest mistake when I was querying, is I was just constantly checking my email. And actually, when I was on submission, once I already had an agent and we were on submission to editors, I specifically said to my agent, please don't email me if an editor is interested. Please, can you phone me? Because at least if she phoned me, I wouldn't be constantly checking my email, because I just knew that was one of my biggest issues. And obviously you can't really do that when you're querying, but there's apps that you can download which block certain apps, or that there's you could just remove it from your phone, like email from your phone, and only check it on the computer. It's just a little bit more difficult. But yeah, I think that was definitely one of my biggest mistakes when I was querying.
Yeah, it's not good for our brains to be constant frantic checking. It's not good. It just really, it's because it's like being in the jungle and constantly doing this over your shoulder. Tiger. It's not good.
Yeah, it was not good. So one of the things that helped me was talking to Lauren North, who was my mentor at the time. And I feel like if I didn't have her, I would have struggled even more, and I probably would have given up. There was a lot of times where I messaged her and said, I've had another rejection, maybe I should just throw this book in the bin. And she was the one who kind of talked me down off the ledge and told me to chill out. But I feel like if you don't have that situation where you've got a mentor, it might be quite difficult to know where to go to talk about these things. So is there anywhere that querying authors can go to sort of discuss the highs and lows?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good question. I think that's another point generally, actually, that it's very niche to be writing a book and submitting a book for publication. So most of our friends and family aren't going to relate. They're going to say, oh, how's the writing going? And you're like, I want to kill myself, and they're like, what? So it can feel, not only are we dealing with all the emotions, but we can feel a bit isolated, and we can feel a bit like no one's kind of getting it. And then we can feel like we're being a bit of a drama, whatever, because it's like, oh, but you get to write, and why are you moaning about it and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that having other people's experiences is really helpful. And I mean, it's a really good question about where to go for support. I mean, I know that there's a nice writing community on Twitter. I know that sometimes people use the hashtag #amquerying. So I don't know if you just search the hashtag. I bet there's loads of people out there who you'll find in the same position. I certainly found that, I mean, there's lots of kind of podcast episodes or articles that authors have written about their experiences of querying. And I think, although it's not necessarily having a conversation, I think often reading those kind of articles can be very reassuring and encouraging to know that other people have been there before, other people have felt the way that you feel, other people have struggled for a long time before actually getting a foot in the door. So yeah, I think just anywhere that you find a writing community, you'll probably find stuff about querying. Even just watching this video, you're not alone. So yeah, I think don't be afraid to seek out other aspiring writers, and yeah, just share your pain with them.
Yeah, definitely. There's a blogger, I can't remember her name. I'll find it and link it in the description. But she interviews authors specifically about their querying experience, and she's got a real focus on her blog of authors who have taken quite a while to get to where they are, and it's, you know, they've been flooded with rejections, and yet they've still persisted and managed to get to the point where they're doing really well with their books. And that was so helpful for me to read that, and because, like you say, we only ever hear about the good stuff. We never really hear about the struggles that people go through. So yeah, I will find out her name. I can't remember it off the top of my head, and I will put it down in the description box, because it's really helpful to hear stories about that, I think.
Yeah. The other thing I was just gonna mention, and I think it's it's a kind of, I always say this because I think sometimes the advice that you get is just don't give up, just keep trying, you'll get there in the end. And definitely, you know, getting to be published and staying published, you know, all the way along involves a huge amount of tenacity. It does require you to pick yourself up time and time and again, to fail and try again, and fail and try again, and fail and try again. However, I think that, say you've written a manuscript and you've submitted it to 50 agents and you haven't had any positive responses, I think just continuing to submit it is unlikely to get a different response. The chances are you need to improve your manuscript or your writing. So I'm always a little bit nervous when I see the advice that says just keep going, because it's not, if you're on the wrong track, or you've not got everything as good as it should be, or there's something that you're missing in terms of, you know, having a book that works or being really on top of your writing craft, you're just going to set yourself up for more failure. So I think that we have to have this kind of weird balance of kind of hope and faith and unbridled optimism and tenacity and determination. But we also have to be realistic. We have to be really open-eyed about, is it good enough yet? And if it's not good enough right now, you can improve it. You really can. But again, that goes back to the whole thing of like having a plan. You know, if you're not getting anywhere, you need to take a step back and think, well, maybe I need to go away and, you know, get some more feedback, do some more edits, maybe even try a different book. So don't be so kind of boneheaded as to just keep thinking that nobody understands my work, or it just hasn't found the agent who gets it yet. If you're not really getting any kind of, you know, bites at all. But if you are getting things like, you know, it's a no, but they've said some positive things about your writing. Certainly if you're getting full manuscript script requests, you're definitely on the right track. So these are little clues that you're on the right track, you're doing something right. You may still need to do a little bit of editorial work, or continue just to buff things up as best you can. Or again, it's kind of, you know, finding the right agent and persevering. But yeah, you know, really pay attention to what the feedback is telling you. And that means either really just keep going with what you've got, or take a step back and work on improving it. And that will hugely improve your chances. So yeah, that would be the other thing that I would say.
Yeah, with sort of getting full manuscript requests, I think that's a really good indicator of whether it's your query that needs work or your book that needs work. Because if you're not getting the full manuscript request, then it might be that you need to just tweak your query a bit. And I do actually offer query critique, so if anyone would like me to look at their query, that will be linked down below as well. But then if you are getting the full manuscript requests, but then they're saying no to the full manuscript, usually you will get some kind of feedback from the agent at that point. If they've asked to see the full thing and then they've rejected it, you usually will get some kind of feedback. So that's the point where you can start saying, right, maybe I need to be tweaking the actual book itself. So that's a really good point about sort of picking up on those clues and figuring out what it actually is that you need to be working on. So in terms of just mental health as a whole, when you're an aspiring author / author, because I think all of this kind of applies to after you've got the agent as well, what would your sort of top 3 tips be for just looking after our mental health in general and making sure we're in a good place?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that writing to get published, or being in the publishing industry, again, is really challenging. And you're absolutely right, Becca. You know, for example, I've so I have, as you said, I have 2 books out and published, but my third one, like, totally not the one that's coming out now, but the initial manuscript that I wrote for my third book totally crashed and burned. Like basically it just wasn't good enough, and I had to sort of scrap it and start all over again with a new book. So I think just knowing that it's kind of always going to be up and down. Like writing is just hard and there's no formula for it. So I sometimes think, how did that book come out well and that one didn't? I don't know. Like I'm the same person. My writing skills haven't particularly changed. It's just sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I think it's a naturally really unpredictable and difficult industry where you're trying to marry creativity with kind of business stuff as well. And I think something that I've learned along the way is to try and be very mindful of the separation between myself as a writer and myself as a kind of published author. That there's certain things that I need to deal with as a published author, like my book not working, or having to write a synopsis when I'm really not ready to write a synopsis, and then my agent not liking what I've written, all that kind of stuff. But I somehow need to kind of not let that seep into my fundamental belief in myself as a writer, my passion for my writing, my love for my writing. And there's been times when like I've literally had to tell my agent editor to back off a little bit, because I just needed to protect that part of myself that was getting crushed by the kind of failure and the struggle and the rejection and the feedback that when we were struggling with this book 3 that ultimately didn't work. And I think that can, I think it's trying to preserve that sense of why you're writing in the first place, the joy of your writing, that your worth doesn't hang on whether like the success or failure in the publishing side. Yes, of course, it's lovely if that's going well, and that's of course going to make you feel great, but not letting that take over. Just that telling stories is kind of, for me at least, what the joy is. And I think again, on a separate thing, connecting in with other authors, so you feel like you've got a peer group who can ride the roller coaster with you, so that you don't feel that you're on your own. And the third thing that, going back to what I was saying earlier, I think something that I've learned over the course of, being published is to very much see yourself as in charge of your own path and your own career. Now, I know that, again, when you're in the querying trenches, it feels like you've got no say so, but just be proactive wherever you can, and feel like make a plan for yourself, and don't. The last situation you want to be in is just feeling totally dependent on the publishing industry, because the publishing industry, it's a difficult beast. It's a business. It's about profits. It's a lot of to do with luck and all of that, and you can't control any of that. So just trying to be as proactive as you can in whatever area that you can will be good for your mental health, to not feel helpless and out of control, like we say, when there's something that's very high stakes. And bring the stakes down by reminding yourself that your worth as a person does not depend on a publishing deal. You as a person is connected to you being a writer who is passionate about writing and telling stories, and that's where the identity comes from.
Yeah. Oh, that's such good advice. And like I say, I think that will help anyone who is watching, regardless of the point in their journey, whether they're querying or they've got an agent or they're thinking about querying or whatever it is. I think it's good advice to remember, no matter where you are in your journey. And I kind of wish I could go back to my former self and give her this video. That would have been great. Well, thank you so much, Philippa. It's been amazing to have you on. Can you, just before we go, can you just tell us a little bit about your new book?
Oh, yeah. So my new book is called I'll Never Tell, and it's coming out, in a few months' time. And you can go and look it up on Amazon or wherever you want now. So it's basically about, it's another psychological suspense book. And this time it's about the Goodlight family, who are kind of seem like, everything's going well for them from the outside. So we've got Julia, who is a full-time lawyer, and her husband Paul, who is a stay-at-home dad, and he looks after their daughter Chrissy, who is a incredibly talented violinist. So she's taking part in a very prestigious music competition, which could change, everything for the family, really. There's a lot resting on Chrissy and Chrissy's dreams of stardom. And but on the night of the performance, she totally disappears. So she gives this absolutely incredible performance. She's absolutely tipped to win, and then she just completely vanishes. And as a result of that, all the realities and secrets of what's going on inside the Goodlight family are going to be blown wide open.
Oh, it sounds so good. It sounds very gripping, I love like hidden family secrets. It's sort of
I know.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Philippa. And like I say, I will put all links to your books and your website and everything like that down below. So do check Philippa out on social media and everything, because she's a fantastic author and offers great advice. I know you did some minisodes for the In Suspense podcast as well, didn't you? So I'll link those down as well, because they are really good for just talking about mental health in general as an author. So I hope that this has been helpful for you, and I hope that you've got some good information to sort of carry you on your journey. And don't forget that I've got the query critiques that I offer down below. So yeah, I hope this has been helpful, and thank you so much for joining us, Philippa.
You're so welcome. Yeah. And, absolutely feel free to kind of get in touch with me on Twitter or ever if I can answer any other questions, I'm around. I'm happy to help where I can.
Wonderful. All right. I will catch up with you soon.